Mm. Good afternoon. This is Group 5 from the English subject, and we are going to discuss TLS3056 English group presentation. Next slide, please. So this is our table of contents, including the introduction, inquiring school background, refined SBA teaching scheme, refined learning and assessment tool, and effectiveness and overall reflection. So let's start with our introduction. So for the key factors of learning, teaching, and assessment cycle, basically it includes three parts. Including attainment, process, goals, and process. So for the key factors of the cycle, first of all, we can see what do we let our students to learn? And also for our attainment is what do we let our students to learn and the result, what have they really learned? Between them is the process. And here we can see that the designated time allocation for students studying English language, we can see for primary 1 students to secondary 6 students, basically they spend 12.5 to 21% of studying time into English subject, which means that it is the compulsory subject for all the students. And also for the aims of English language curriculum, basically there are 2 points. First of all, to provide every student of English with further opportunities for extending their knowledge and experience of the cultures of other people, as well as opportunities for personal and intellectual development, further studies, pleasure, and work in the English curriculum, and also to enable every student to prepare for the changing socio-economic demands resulting from advances in information technology. These demands include the interpretation, use, and production of materials for pleasure, study, and work in the English curriculum. And for the generic skills under the curriculum, so we can see there are basically 9 skills, including collaboration skills, communication skills, creativity, to name but a few. And for the school-based curriculum development of the English language, we can see that the development includes the readjusting the learning targets, varying the organization of contents, adding optional studies, or adapting learning, teaching, and assessment strategies. And we should also pay attention to adapt the assessment strategies. And for the roles of assessment, actually our ultimate goal is to promote self-directed learning for students by recognizing their strengths and weaknesses by different generic skills. And our aim is to refine the school-based assessment to improve teaching and learning.
Okay, so now we comes into the section 2, inquiring our school background. We're first gonna inquire the EDP documents and then examine our original learning activities and assessment. Next, please. Next, please. So we chose the English Language Education Key Learning Area Curriculum Guide as our EDP document, and we find that English language education is one of the key learning areas in Hong Kong curriculum. Next, please. And there are 3 interconnected components of the curriculum framework. They are knowledge in key learning areas, generic skills, values, and attitudes. They are correlated and complement with each other. Next, please. And also the documents provide schools a concrete reference to design and conduct teaching activities. To sum up, it highlights the importance of context, task-based learning, language skills, generic skills, and so on. Next, please. And the subject targets can categorize into 3 domains: cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain. Next, please. So it also provides some detailed requirements for simple past tense learning and the language learning target for key stage 1. Next, please. So based on this requirement, we examine our original lesson plan and we find that the original one matches with the requirements of cognitive domain because it developed the students the concept of the past tense and used past tense to communicate. Next, please. But the original lesson doesn't matches with the affective domain without having students respond and express to their real life experience. Next, please. As for the psychomotor domain, we find that it has students develop and apply the knowledge, but the test type procedures, it belongs to the key stage 2, so it's not that suitable for P3 students. Next, please. And finally, as for the assessment, the document connects summative and formative assessment with the AOL, AFL, and AAL, and it promotes formative assessment in the school English language education curriculum. So next pass time to Cindy.
Thanks, Grace. Then let me introduce about the original school-based teaching materials and their learning objectives. So we can see this school use Chinese as a medium language as their teaching language. And we can see the lesson contents, teachers usually teach about basic English grammar like tenses, sentence structure, and they usually use interactive games and visual aids to teach students vocabulary. And I want to draw your attention to the student's background here. We can see there is a diverse background and nearly 63 local students, and the other students either are mainland Chinese immigrants or they are from international backgrounds. And here, students have moderate English proficiency, and they usually have weaker speaking and listening skills. Next page, please. Then let me introduce the learning objectives as for 3 lessons one by one. In the lesson one, we can see the objectives here you focus on the foundational grammar, which are about understanding past tense and identifying regular verbs. However, However, teacher doesn't have explicit link to real-world application beyond classroom activities, and but the good thing is the teachers want to build on prior knowledge logically from present tense to the simple past tense. Next page, please. So in the lesson two, it is about the past tense irregular verbs, and teacher wants to expand from regular to irregular verbs. And however, the school curriculum requirement asks students to talk about past tense to describe activities and events in a story. However, here we can see teachers' learning objectives doesn't meet school curriculum objectives, and teacher doesn't have sufficient approach. Like teacher just simply enable students to recognize irregular past tense verbs, which is not enough. Next page, please. In a summary of 3 lessons, we can see there's no connection and coherence in total 3 lessons. The problem here is that the prior knowledge was not detailed enough for students, and students are not adequately to learn new materials, such as write a procedure text. And this disconnection may hinder students' ability to build upon previous knowledge. Next page, please. And for the school scenario, we can see this school background usually focused on developing reading comprehension skills, which is not speaking and listening skills. And the students and school also incorporate activities such as drama. They also offer students immersion programs for students to practice speaking and oral skills. Next page, please. And here we can see from the school students background, we can see some diagnosis of students' learning difficulties. Because of the diverse background, students may have large learning gap and which possess significant challenges in teaching and learning. And students may also have language barriers, like students may struggle with English as the primary teaching language. And students' limited English proficiency in speaking may make them feel struggled to finish some high-level text. Next page, please. For the lesson one, we can see the learning difficulties from lessons one by one. So in lesson one, these activities, the current method of testing verbs past tense is overly simplistic, and this activity just primarily assess students' memorization skills, which can be very challenging for many students. And another activity, we can see the instructions are not clear, which may lead to confusion among students. And also there's no scaffolding for students. Next page, please. For the lesson two's activity, we can see in this homework, the issue is it is failure to account for varying English proficiency levels among students. Some students may feel very struggled with writing complete sentence, and also there's no scaffolding for students to help them. Next page, please. For the lesson 3, the first difficulty is the disconnection from previous lessons, so that students can't have enough language knowledge to write about procedure text. And you can see the teacher asks students to write about recipe. However, those recipes involve imperative sentences, which students may not have studied. And also, there's no explanation for students to help them. Next page, please. For the lesson 3, you can see in this worksheet, and students doesn't have sufficient preparation of prior knowledge, which make it very difficult for students to write recipe directly. And also, we can see there's no framework and no scaffolding, which may make some students feel very isolated from the teaching process. Then pass time to Toby. Next page, please.
So now I'm going to talk about the original learning activities and its shortage for the lessons. So for lesson 1, we are talking about regular past tense, but the introduction of past tense using PowerPoint is not sufficient for students to learn, since the past tense example is not good enough to show students the reason of using past tense, as there is no time word provided in the examples. For example, yesterday, last night, 2 days ago, this morning, and therefore students cannot understand the usage of past tense, which is to emphasize the event was happened in the past. And also there is a lack of authentic context, as if we use real-life context, it can be implied as an example for students to understand the content more easily and to attach to the topic. And also the lesson cannot cater for learners' learning needs, and it needs more detailed explanation for lower levels of learners. And for the extension activity, the speaking task, it also cannot cater for students' learning diversity, and it is not easy for primary 3 students to finish a speaking practice by completing a worksheet in the complete sentences without much instruction by teachers. And also there is a low participation by students because we should specify an interesting discussion topic for them to engage in. And also for the lesson 2, the irregular past tense, the verb bingo activity, which is only includes some verbal instruction for the students, and no instruction is written on the PowerPoint, as the primary 3 student cannot follow like only verbal instruction, and also the word font is not clear.
And thank you, Toby. And please go to page 37. Last page. Yes, thank you. So here I'll talk about the use of the irregular past tense. So for the group activity, which is the role playing, there are no instructional wordings that are too difficult for the students to understand the procedure. That's why we are going to waive it. And also the instructions are not clear, and the primary 3 students may not be able to create props on their own. So there is also the lack of coherence with the previous lesson. Next slide, please. And for lesson 3, for the procedural text, the coherence is absent with the previous lessons talking about the past tense, so we waive it again. And for the original learning outcome, for the students to understand the concept of using past tense and let them to identify and use the regular or irregular past tense verbs in the correct way. And it also helps them to apply correct past tense verbs in reading or speaking practices. But for the limitations, the skill and knowledge is insufficient. And also there is a huge contrast between the learning outcome and the learning process. Thank you.
And now we are going to talk about the original assessment of the original lesson plan. Okay, so for the lesson 1, there is an after-game evaluation for the past tense series, which is just a brief discussion about some past tense forms and also some clarification of questions. And there is also a consolidation part, which reviews the answers as a class and also discuss difficulties encountered in the class. But the problem with this assessment is that there are no assessment being done in the warm-up stage and the introduction stage. And the activities only assess students' performance with peer evaluation instead of teacher evaluation. Next, please. And also, there's a speaking task, which is an interview worksheet as an homework. And this speaking assessment was implemented when the kids did not have a solid base knowledge about regular past tense. Therefore, this is not an effective assessment.
Lesson 2, the assessment is a verb bingo, which is about the students circling the words that appear on the sheet by listening to the teachers calling out the base form of the verbs. And I think that the major problem of this assessment is it fails to include a structural feedback mechanism that could provide students with the constructive feedback on their performance during the whole activity. And this assessment also has a reward system, but it fails to cover the majority of the class because it only covers the top 3 students. And for lesson 3, one of the assessments is identifying key elements of the text type recipe. And we think that it demonstrates zero effort in recalling or providing some context that can support students' learning on past tense. So another assessment is about designing recipe on a worksheet. Similarly, it is completely irrelevant to the previous lessons and the objectives of helping the students to apply past tense on verbs, so which makes it not much of a point to analyze all the assessments from this particular lesson.
Okay, so now we come into the section 3, the refined SBA teaching scheme. Next, please. So this is the content of our section 3. Next, please. And first of all, we're gonna respond to the EDB document, and based on this document, we find that our original lessons align with the subject-specific learning objectives as well as the communicative functions for Key Stage 1. But they are too much and too difficult, and for P3 students to learn 3 objectives in one lessons, and they are not coherent, and they are lack of authentic communicative context. Lastly, they are not catered for students' learning difficulties. Next, please. So we are gonna refine, so based on this requirement, we're gonna refine our learning objectives to simplify the aims of the lessons and provide more downgraded activities and scaffolding them. And we are gonna provide more chances to practice their overseas skills. Next, please. And here are our revised learning objectives. And next, please. And there are some generic skills, and they are aligned with some generic skills. Next, please. And this is the different category of the our learning objectives, and it align with the 3 domains. Next, please. And as for the attitudes, we find that our revised learning objectives focus on the language, the enhancements of language, and their confidence in using English. And we want to improve their self-management skills, self-learning skills through their self-evaluation and group activities, and as well as the communication skills in their group activities and classroom discussion. And then let's pass time to Cindy.
Thanks, Grace. And then we will talk about the skills. So we can see we want to match the learning objectives to teaching contents in each lesson, and we want to develop students' generic skills like collaboration skills and communication skills, and also critical thinking skills. Next page, please. And also about skills, such as examine their learning outcomes through self-evaluations. In the lesson 3, we want students to monitor their learning process through self-evaluation and peer evaluation, which they can be engaged in homework marking. And the general skills we want to develop them is critical thinking skills and self-management skills. Next page, please. And for the knowledge, we want we want students to recognize and apply correct usage of regular past tense, and also students can understand and identify the language form of regular past tense. So in the lesson 1 and 2, we will let students know when to use the past tense, and in lesson 2, students can communicate with others by asking what they did in the past. So the general skills we want to develop them is communication skills, self-learning skills. Next page, please. Then pastime too.
So thank you, Sandy. And I'll kick off the 3.2, the learning activities. So for our lesson procedure, for lesson 1, for the pre-test is how was your childhood be like? And we'll teach and introduce past tense to students, including the concept and usage. And we also provide post-test, which is the Kahoot. And for our lesson 2, first of all, we'll have Kahoot as our pre-test, and also we'll have some picture prompts and the writing handout as the homework. And for lesson 3, we'll have the pre-test, speaking and interview, and ask students to present what information they have. Next slide, please. And for the principles for making the assessment for the pre-test, bring them back to the childhood. It aligns with the principles 1 and 6, and we can see teach and introduce past tense. It aligns with principle 1, 3, and 5. And for the post-test Kahoot game, it aligns with principle 1, 2, 3, 5, 9, and 10. And now let's pass the time to Toby.
So to talk about lesson 1 pre-test, how was your childhood be like? So the procedures is to share what teacher did in the past as a kid, and teacher will invite some students to share the interesting things they did as children, and then teacher will jot down some of them on the blackboard and to indicate the time difference as a one activity for the class. And it is a diagnostic assessment, and its significance is that it is a assessment as motivation, which can boost their motivation with interesting warm-up, and to set the authenticity of this lesson, which is talking about our past, and the facilitation of group dynamics to share personal stories among classmates and enhance their collaboration and teamwork in future activities. Also, for lesson 1, the activity is to teach and introduce regular past tense. So the procedures will be like simply introduce and explain what past tense is, and to highlight some past tense rules, and to conduct some verbal assessment by asking questions. And its significant is it is a foundation for language skills to build confidence for the students to boost their confidence in speaking and writing, and also is a preparation for the advanced task in the unit. So for the protest, it's the Kahoot game, which is a formative assessment, and it will help students to briefly review the past tense rules before starting the quiz, and to share the game code with students. And after the quiz, teacher will go over some answers and clarify any misunderstandings from the quiz. And there is some sample questions in the Kahoot, and you can consolidate students for the lesson content and cater for different learning styles of students, since some of them may good at visual and gaming. And also you can encourage students to be attentive in class by competitive activity. Here is some Kahoot sample in lesson 1. It had empty questions on regular past tense, which can record their memorized information and to cover broad range of content. And for the true or false questions, it can clarify students' concept or the usage of past tense. It can evaluate student knowledge of common misconceptions, because we need students to explain if they choose the false as an answer, and it can prevent guessing. For lesson 2, the Kahoot game is having the same procedure. And the lesson 2 Kahoot sample, there is some uncommon and difficult verbs that will be provided as questions, because more thinking will be required for students for an advanced assessment. And it also same requirement as student needs to explain if they choose the false in the true or false questions, to add more consolidations for them to learn more about the usage of regular past tense. And for lesson 2, the activity will be picture prompts. The students will practice using regular past tense verbs to describe actions depicted in images, and then they will do some discussions based on the topics and themes. And the significance is that it is a consolidation of regular past tense forms through actual practice, And it also encourages peer learning and preparation for the writing handouts coming for the next lesson. And it also boosts their confidence. And for the writing handout, it can help consolidate students and to make the task more interesting for them to complete it in a visual learning impact. And also it can practice students' writing skills. And the procedures will be distribution of the handouts and to remind them to hand in on the other day and to collect students' work after, but then do not mark it until they have finished both self and peer evaluation as a formative assessment.
So thank you, Toby. And here goes the lesson 3 pre-test. So first of all, is a diagnostic assessment. The procedures include distributing the handouts to students as their homework, and also with peer feedback, self-evaluation, and teacher observation. For the significance, it increases students' confidence through presentation and positive feedback. And it includes different kinds of feedback, which can help students to reflect on their own learning progress on the content. And for the lesson activity, speaking and interview, the procedures include assigning a speaking task for students to interview at least 3 classmates about what they did last week. And we explain the task to students to finish the interview and mark down a classmate's answer on the worksheet distributed. For the significance, it increases students' confidence through presentation, and it also applies the knowledge students learn in the lesson in the speaking practice. And for the post-test, present what you have got. The procedures include explain that each student will present their findings from the interview, focusing on their use of the past tense. It also allows students to practice their presentations with a partner. It emphasizes the importance of using the past tense throughout the presentation. And for the significance, it boosts confidence through presentation, develops their verbal communication skills, and accesses students' understanding of the past tense.
Okay, so we are going to talk about the assessment plan of the refined teaching scheme. And this is the lesson 1 for assessment plan, and which the pretest aligned with the principle 1 and 6. The activity aligns with principle 1, 3, and 5, and the post-test Kahoot aligns with principle 1, 2, 3, 5, 9, and 10. And for the pretest, which is the warm-up game, it talks about a worksheet that talks about childhood memories, and there is also encouraging the students to use real-life examples and provide the teacher with insights into the students' existing knowledge, which can identify different gaps and misconceptions that the students have about past tense. Next, please. So for the assessment strategies for the activity, we can ask the students questions related to the past tense that are being taught in class and check the students' concept on the past tense that are being taught with observation. And for the assessment strategies for the post-test, which is the Kahoot games, because Kahoot is a very easy method for assessment, so we can use this as a quiz that can given to the students to consolidate their knowledge, and we can also use the results of the Kahoot to check the students' understanding on the lesson. And also we can provide further explanations of the different questions that the students might got wrong.
So for lesson 2, it has a total of 3 assessments, including a Kahoot, a picture prompts, and writing handout. So for the pre-test Kahoot, it is about teachers helping the students to retell the contents mentioned in lesson 1, and the questions within the Kahoot is similar to the post-test of lesson 1, except that it would be more challenging than the post-test so that the teachers can use it to keep track of the students' progress. And for the picture prompts, it is an assessment for support of learning, and it allows the teacher to continuously assess students' understanding and application of regular past tense. And most importantly, the teachers can provide immediate feedback on the usage of the language form. And for the assignment of writing handout, it is about assessing students' understanding of past tense through the amount of questions that they could correctly answer. And it serves as a formative assessment tool that allows teachers to gather data on the grades and the marks of the students so that he can keep track of the progress of students.
So now I'm going to talk about the assessment plan for lesson 3. And for lesson 3, there's a review for handout answers, there's a speaking activity, and there's a presentation for the post-test. And for the strategies for the pre-test, the teacher reviews the students' answer to get of the homework together. And the students can review their work with their peers using a peer evaluation form, and the students can learn from others' goods and mistakes during the pre-test. And we are using the 2 stars and a wish as the method for peer evaluation, as we can use this for the students to discover different things that are good from the other students and learn from their mistakes. So for the assessment strategy for lesson 3, the activity of lesson 3, the students can work on their communication skills and they are given a chance to practice English speaking. And the teacher can also assess the students' understanding on the usage of past tense through listening the students do the interviews themselves, and they can also assess the students' usage of past tense through the notes being taken down. And for the assessment strategies for the post-test, the teacher can assess the students through the usage of past tense during the presentation, and the teacher can also use an assessment form to assess the students' performance on the presentation.
We also have a standard reference assessment to assess a student's whole speaking performance so that we can determine the different levels of maybe excellent, good, satisfied, or maybe need some sort of improvement. So for the criteria and for the rubrics, we assign 60% of the point to the usage of past tense because the learning of past tense is the whole gist of our planning. And like, for example, in order to attain the level of excellence, it is necessary for students to showcase very good consistency and accuracy in using past tense. And also, we also value the voice projection and the use of body languages because we would like to help our students to develop a very well-rounded speaking ability and to be able to apply the English in a productive way. And for the collection and showcase of students' learning outcomes, we have like different segments in different lessons. Like for lesson 1, it is about collecting the pre-test. How was your childhood alike? And it aligns with the criterion of goal-referenced and conducive to learning. Also, the use of Kahoots can help the teacher to gather and showcase the results of students for each question, and it is very timely and very conducive to learning. And lastly, for lesson 1, the teacher will also give feedback and explain each question from time to time, which aligns with the criterion of timely, conducive to learning, and actionable. So for lesson 2, firstly, the teacher would clarify the common mistakes that the students is making using the Kahoots, and it aligned with the criterion A, B, and D. The teacher would also let students apply and present what they see from the pictures during the picture prompts part, and it aligns with criterion of timely, conducive to learning, and actionable. And at the meantime, the peer feedback is also encouraged, so it is also aligning with the criterion of encouraging peer evaluation. For the last lesson, firstly, it would be about letting students do self and peer evaluation on the assignment of writing handout, and it aligns with criterion A, B, D, and E. And also, the teacher would guide students to conduct interviews with peers and present their findings so that we meet most of the criterions for feedback. And I think that would do it. Thank you.